But it also taught me that people can love a film, but if it's not hitting the right marketing or it's just not the timing, that, it can still not be a financial success.
This episode is brought to you by the best-selling book, Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, How to Turn Your Independent Film into a Money-Making Business. Learn more at filmbizbook.com. I'd like to welcome to the show, Terrence Martin, man. How you doing, Terrence?
Great, man. Thanks for having me. We love the show.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Yeah, you've been telling me that you were a fan and you've been listening to it, and it was kind of like a lifeline of like what's going on in the business while you were going through your opus of making a movie, an independent film for 7 years and all that stuff, which we're going to get into your new movie. But I'm glad we could be a voice of reason and scare the hell out of you as well along the way.
Definitely. Hearing some of the other similar horror stories, and when you make something new and you have your head down for 7 years, when you come out, the industry is completely different. So hearing from your guest helped us avoid a lot of troubles as we sold our film. So
awesome. Of course. That's why we're here doing that, man. So how did you first of all, why did you want to get into this insanity, and how did you get into this insanity that is the film business?
Yeah, man, I got bit by the creative bug really early. I grew up in like a blue collar town in Connecticut. This was not like the Who's the Boss Connecticut. It was a pretty tough town. And I got into something they deemed the gifted program, right? Where they ship you off to another school with a few people, which was like the worst thing you could call something at that time, because all the other kids like resented you. But when I got to this special program every week, the teacher said, "Hey, what would you like to do?" And I said, "Well, I love storytelling. I love reading. I love movies." And she's like, "Go in that room and just write." And I must have been in third grade, and I just started writing. Wow. And I would come back, and the teacher would say, "Now read it to me in the class." And she would always say, "Yeah, your stories are okay." But my peers, my friends would start asking me for these stories. So since third grade, I had a really great relationship with writing. And my cousin was in film school. She was much older than me. And she would then take her 16 millimeter camera, and we would make these fun little horror movies on the beach, because I was the VHS generation. So I would skip school and come home with like a pile of movies. And, I was really into horror films at the time. So it just was, writing and filmmaking were pleasures for me at a young age. And it kind of stuck through college. I wanted to come straight out to LA at 18, but, parents are like, "You're going to get your degree, Mm-hmm. So I went to a liberal arts school, and I was pretty miserable unless I was studying writing, filmmaking. And they allowed me to finish here at UCLA campus. They were just starting this thing called the New York Film Academy in LA. Mm-hmm. And they let me do like basically a half a semester's credits to take this program. And it was right on the UCLA campus. And right after, they went to Universal Studios, and they needed people to help with the summer program. And I got a job with them, which was basically just running all around the lot, making short films with these like crazy high schoolers. So we would like be at the Psycho House one day making a film with one. And one of my early students was Max Spielberg. So it was just like crazy, man.
You worked with Max?
Yeah. He didn't really had to love like Steven for filmmaking, but it was so crazy to be like teaching Spielberg's son, not really teaching, just being a liaison for his short films. But it was really
cool.
Yeah, it was fun, man. And it really taught me that I had a lot of work to do, because most of my other teaching assistants were straight out of UCLA grad school. So here I am like, "Hey, I'll help you get your film made. I'll read your scripts." And they were like, "Who are you, man? You just came out of the New York Film Academy program." So I realized straight off, like, this is going to be very competitive, and I better work hard, So I just really started focusing on writing scripts and reading everything I could. I had already taken to Joseph Campbell and The Hero's Journey. That was probably my favorite arc book about how the writing process should be. But then I just read everything, put my nose to the grindstone and wrote 10 or 15 scripts, and was lucky enough to have a manager take one out on the town. It didn't sell, but it was the exact story of The Revenant, but told through the kid's perspective, who was Jim Bridger. But it was that same trapping mission, which is like a famous mission. I remember going into to meetings, and just because they passed, I thought, well, if they're meeting, I still have a chance to get this made, Instead of just like cultivating a relationship, I would be trying to press, this Mountain Man script. And I was meeting with this executive. She's like, yeah, you're really good with story. You're cool with characters, but we're working on Scooby-Doo too. And I said, can we call it Scooby-Don't and make Eyes West this American epic? And her face was like record scratch. And I thought, okay, like I'm doing this all wrong.
Wow. What? Can we call it Scooby-Doo?
I was making a silly joke, but it was like, okay, cool. Like, thanks for coming in for the meeting, Terrence. We'll be in touch.
So lesson for everyone listening, don't do what Terrence said.
But I also realized, like, I don't know that I want to be auditioning as a writer for Scooby-Doo. Like, I loved the show as a kid, but I want to do my own stuff. And that's when I started writing The Donner Party, you know, which ultimately got made.
So,
Yeah.
so during this time, there was like a little side hustles you had to do in LA
Yeah.
to make a living. You've had some very interesting ones. Can you talk about your time as a test screener? Because test screenings, we all hear of these legendary test screenings, like the Airplane one, which was notoriously bad because nobody wanted to admit that they liked it, or
Totally.
you know, all these kind of movies that like the ending of Fatal Attraction was
Yep.
changed because of the test screening. So tell us your adventures in the test screening phase and what actually goes on behind the curtain. Because I truly never been, I've been in a test screening once or twice in my life, but I truly don't know how the studios work within it and what the process is. And tell me what you know.
Sure. Well, I had gone from the New York Film Academy, and I knew that the summer program was ending. So I kind of just was walking around a lot, and I got a PA job on Holes, which has turned out to be kind of a hero to that generation. It was Shia LaBeouf's first movie, but man, they worked me. I was a PA in the art department from start to finish. And I came out of that thinking, like, what kind of job can I do where I make my own hours and I write? And I don't know if you're ever living in LA, you see these guys like giving out free movie passes all the time. And the point is to rate the film. And I thought, like, there can't be an easier sales job than get a person to see a movie. And it did turn out to be a lot harder than I thought, but it was still pretty easy. And it was really good money. Like, if you put in the hours, you could work whenever you want. You could go to a cinema at 12 at night and get people if that's what you felt like doing. And I liked the freedom of it. And they started to ship me off to other cities. So what would happen is you would get like a demographic. You would say, hey, like, I remember The Ring was an early one, the first Ring. I went to San Diego and they wanted high school age girls and boys. So we would go to high schools and we would talk to teachers and try to get like their perfect audience. And then they would all fill out a questionnaire and the filmmakers get a score. Basically, the main score is like how many people rated it very good or excellent. That's like the number one score, because they can really say, oh, wow, we have a movie that super plays. And then the other score is like how many people recommend it, because sometimes they'll like it, but they won't recommend, which can impact the box office. So I just went on this run for like 4 years of just a different city every Friday, because basically if you're filling screenings, they need you. Like, they need people who are getting numbers, just like any sales job. And we were killing it. So I had this partner, and we did the highest scoring movie, just so people get an idea of like what studios really want, was Hitch with Will Smith. Like, I had never seen a movie score that high. I think it was like 99 or near 100 in both boxes.
Really?
And Will Smith was at that screening, and you just gave these scores to Will and the director, and their faces, because they know how key these scores are to the studio heads, their faces just lit up like they won the Super Bowl. They were like, yeah, like you can't get better than that. Like, and the movie was a massive hit because it's such a crowd pleaser, you know? And I realize in these screenings, when you make something just that pleases the crowd, it's a really special thing, because the dramas, even when they're good, like Coen Brothers stuff, I don't know that they test so great, because people need time to reflect. You can't just put a paper in someone's face. 12 Monkeys was one that didn't test well at all, but still had good critical acclaim and has now become a hit, but people didn't know what to make of it from the first moment. So it's not conducive to like saying, yeah, I love this, because you're just like, whoa, what the hell was that? I'm sure like 2001, you know, wouldn't test well either, even though it's a complete classic. Right. Because these movies need more reflection. And probably the coolest thing I've ever seen in a test screening was I was working on Inglourious Bastards here in LA at I forget what theater it was, but nobody had seen the film, and Quentin, being who he was, and Harvey would generally bully, when I worked for Harvey, would generally bully filmmakers. He would use the scores to get to cut the movie he did. So Quentin just took all the cards when they were done, threw them in the trash right in front of Harvey, and said, I'm just going to talk to the audience about my film. And it was so great and so refreshing to see a filmmaker just so proud of his work that he didn't even want to see the scores. I mean, I would never recommend this to a young filmmaker that has an opportunity.
Unless your name is Quentin.
Yeah, but it was cool. Finally, a guy in the audience like had the courage to say, hey, like, I don't know why you would use a David Bowie song in a period movie. And he goes, because I'm the director and I love it there. Like, and they were like, okay, cool. Like,
okay, cool.
Yeah, that was nice. But
That's pretty fascinating. Now, I've heard of those stories of Harvey during his heyday that he would bully filmmaker. I know Studio 54 was a really big one. He just literally just took that away from the filmmaker and
Yeah.
really cut it up and made it into something that it really didn't. It wasn't good. Years later, the director got a chance to do a director's cut. But yeah, I've heard, and I'm imagining other studios and studio executives would use the test screening results to kind of bully or push around directors to get what they want, right?
Yeah, and to be fair, sometimes the film's just not working, and they
Right.
see it, and they thought they had a crowd pleaser, or they thought they had a genre film that scared people, and it wouldn't work. So the directors would come in and recut it. I also worked for Judd Apatow a lot. I did the first test screening of 40-Year-Old Virgin, and
Oh.
it was awesome because we were in Thousand Oaks, and the film broke, and there was only like 10 minutes left. Like everything had been resolved, and everybody just stayed glued to their seats. And I remember I was sitting near Seth Rogen, and I said, man, like, you are going to be massive after this movie. Because you could just feel it, the energy. But Judd was really good because he's a comedy guy. So he could read the audience, and he could do a second test screening with a couple of key jokes and just tweak them in the editing room or reshoot something. And then the crowd would explode. So for comedy, I think test screening is like so essential, even on
that level. But did you also see multiple test screenings on the same film? So like you would see the original, it tests bad, they go back, shoot, re-edit, come back and get it. Like, did you go through that process too?
Yeah, for Knocked Up, it didn't test bad. His films never tested bad, but the ending was a boy, I think, in the original, and it was like a dick joke. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I don't think Judd would mind. He's such a cool guy. And it was like you had so much of that the whole movie that when you changed it to a girl, and he had the ability to read the screening and make that adjustment, and it just made you leave with this kind of like warm feeling, not just a joke. I thought that was pretty brilliant that he made that adjustment. And I saw that a lot with filmmakers that were open to the test screening, and those were the filmmakers the studios really wanted to work with because they knew that their film could be changed. And when a director was new and they were too married to it, I found like, wow, like a lot of guys never worked again after bad test screenings because they were inflexible with their film.
You said you also worked on The Departed, right?
Yeah.
with a young and up and coming director at the time named Martin Scorsese, Marty, something like that. Scorsese. What was it? So I'd love to hear, because he's legendary for being an auteur, like truly, you're not touching a frame of my movie. So what was a test screening of like a legend like that? Was he in the room? Were you there?
Oh yeah, that was exciting, man, because of course I'm a huge, like,
Marty.
Goodfellas is for me like one of the tops. Like, I mean, he just hits home runs. Like that's what he does. So I was so excited, and we were in Chicago at this cool art house theater, but he had been so like nervous about that. He told the projectionist not to start the film until he gave the okay, but nobody could find him. And it was my job to find him. So I'm running around the theater, looking through seats. All the lights are already down, like the movie's ready to go. And then finally I find him and I get on the wire and I'm like, hey, I'm here with Martin. And the projectionist goes, okay, cool. We can roll now. So he had already talked to his technicians and made sure, like, on his command only to go. And the movie was almost exactly what came on the final screen. There was a few key scenes where Jack Nicholson was really improvising that I noticed were a bit shorter. And I thought that was a really smart move on his part, because you could kind of feel like, oh, this is great acting, but the story wasn't moving at the same pace that it was. And it was really interesting for me that he, who is, such a
Martin.
awesome, yeah. And his famous editor, Thelma, was there. So that was awesome, man.
That was awesome. So Jack, because I know in that movie, Jack Nicholson, he would kind of, I think you do a take or two or how many takes of the script, and then Marty would go nuts and see what you come up with. And a lot of that the improvised stuff did fall in the movie, and it's such gold because it's Jack Nicholson riffing.
But man, if you saw that first cut before, it was like that, like in a few scenes with a couple minutes extra, which I love, but I realized, he won the Oscar for that. So he could feel, it's so interesting when when you're in the movie house, you can just kind of feel the energy dropping, which is funny that I made such an art film of Get Away If You Can, because this movie would never test well. It would be like the movie you don't make, but I just needed maybe all that testing I needed to express myself in an artistic kind of way,
And what lessons did you learn from that test screening experience as a filmmaker yourself?
I think when I'm writing and my hopes are to make a bigger budget movie, to really think of the audience, like really think of how you're making people feel. If you're trying to scare them, really get that right. Is it like you're writing for the audience in a way? Film is a business, and these big budget movies need an audience. And it really taught me that the audience is unforgiving. Even with a free movie, they would leave. Often, they would say, hey, this movie's not for me. And sometimes you'd be dealing with like a half a theater, and you would realize like these guys that spent millions and millions of dollars, these are not small movies, had made a complete flop. And, if you're not thinking of the audience, there are certain budget levels you can get away with art, right? But when you're doing these big films, man, you need to deliver. And
what was the worst screening of a big movie that you ever were in?
Oh, no.
Come on, you could say. I mean, like, you're not test screening anymore. Did you sign an NDA? Come on.
It was a DC comic that never got another one made, but I like the filmmaker a lot, but it was like a true disaster, and it was his first feature, and he didn't want to make any of the notes with the studio, and he never got to do it. Like, they took a huge risk in hiring him. And
did that movie get released?
It got released. It got released. I'll just say it was a DC comic hero, not one of the main ones, but it was quite sad because they put a lot in. There was some innovative stuff with the sounds and the music, but it just didn't deliver. And some of the effects teams were laughable, so the whole audience would laugh in not a good way. And instead of cutting that, which they should have done, they left it in, and it really took people out because if you don't deliver great CGI with these big tentpole movies, that's what people are judging, the visuals, right? So it would have been so much smarter just to cut it out. But, it was just, it was quite sad because he was about my age, and I just saw him just butting heads, and I was like, this is not going to end well for this guy,
And if you're Ridley Scott or Martin Scorsese, you can get away with that because you've already had decades of creating behind you. But when you're first up, man, you get a shot like that, you gotta play ball. It's a balancing act where you need to protect your artistic integrity. But at the end of the day, these people are spending just hundreds of, like, 50 million, $100 million. You kind of have to.
This was over. And he had the audience telling him too, like, we do, like, overwhelmingly, this scene is laughable, cut it, take it away. But it just, sometimes the filmmaker's stubbornness, like, you like it and you don't care that the whole world and maybe your career is never going to get another shot like that. And
go ahead. No. And I feel bad. What did he see? What did he do?
He put on his battle hat. It wasn't at all like taking notes. It was just like, I am battling, and that's that. And, never got a chance to make a big studio movie again.
And I mean, that's why I feel so bad for the guys who did Batgirl. That's unheard of. Like, even bad movies get dropped into streaming. Why would they shelve $100 million? And Michael Keaton was back, for God's sakes, as Batman. Like, what is going on?
Even if it doesn't play, like, you have so many fans that are going to check it out and comment on it and talk about it. Like,
dude, they released Catwoman. Yeah. I mean, is it worse than Catwoman? Like, how much worse can it be than Catwoman or Cats? Let's just put Cats out there. How much worse can it be than Cats? For God's sakes, man.
And you have like a thirsty film audience for it too. So even if it's bad, it's like you're going to have people watching it. And that's the main thing with streaming, is you want eyeballs and time. So that wouldn't surprise me.
I think if if they decided right now, they just say, hey, you know what? We're putting it on HBO Max. Do you know how many people would just watch it just
that weekend? All Twitter would just be talking about this movie.
It would trend, as the kids say. It would be trending. So do you have an insane story? Like, I can't believe this happened in one of these screenings?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Quentin was pretty awesome because I was like, wow, man, someday to have that power as a creative force. But I had a really good one, which was kind of sad too, with Denzel Washington. He directed a movie called The Great Debaters, and that scored really, really high. But at the same time, he had that movie where he was She was like a criminal kingpin coming out. And the
Oh,
audience,
American Gangster.
yeah, totally. But he didn't direct that one. It was a Ridley
That was
Scott
Ridley.
film.
Yeah, Ridley. Yeah.
So all the energy of his directorial debut went to that film. And even when I was testing it, everybody's like, no, I don't want to see that Denzel one. I want to see that crime one. So even though that movie scored super high, audiences didn't come out for it. But I remember like working with like Denzel as a legend, and I had the cards and he's like, how much to make those all good? And I'm like, you don't need anything. Like, they're wonderful. Like, people are really loving your film. But it also taught me that people can love a film, but if it's not hitting the right marketing or it's just not the timing, that, you know, it can still not be a financial success, even with Denzel promoting it. And I don't think he acted it. He only directed it.
Now, but, did you also work with the Academy in some way? I heard you say. Yeah,
I had a job. One of my early peers had a job right out of film school, like hosting talent coordination on the red carpet. So he would basically hire you as a page for the Oscars and the Emmys, and you would on Friday you would get like a program of the whole show, and you would see like 3 celebrities that you were in charge of making sure they were on camera when they needed to be. And that would include like meeting them on the red carpet and greeting them. And, you know, there's every now and then there's like a person who doesn't show up when the nomination, and that's my job. Like, somebody screwed up in my job because that's highly coordinated. So,
like, they shouldn't be in the bathroom is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And they should know exactly, hey, your award's coming up, or you're presenting in 2 commercials. We take them to the green room, or the producers really want you at the start of the show. And that was insane because I started that in my early 20s. And I remember early on, Russell Crowe was one of his first years at the Academy Awards. I forget if it was Beautiful Mind or what came first, but they really wanted him at the head of the show. But his publicist was having him do like interview after interview. And it's like, okay, like, we're 3 minutes to go. They just said, grab Russell. We don't even care if he's in an interview. So I, being the good employee, just grabbed his arm in the middle of the interview, and he turns like he's going to punch me in the face. And I was like, oh my God, like, I'm about to get hit on camera.
By Maximus.
Totally. And I think this was maybe even pre-Gladiator, but he said, what do you want, man? Why are you bothering me? And I said, no, I work for the show. Like, if you don't get your ass in the seat right away, you're going to miss the whole opening of the show. And he's like, why don't you just tell me that, right? Come on. And I ran him in. And Entertainment Weekly the next day was a shot of him looking at me, and you could see me in the corner like this, like really small. And nobody knew the context of it, but it was really crazy. And, but that could have been like, I could have been that guy, you know, that everybody would have been talking about that the next day. Russell knocks out a page on the red carpet.
So in your new film, it's called Get Away If You Can. Tell me the journey of this 7-year, because, you know, I'm all about filmmakers making their movies. And I know we're all nuts. You know, we're crazy. But when you get to the 7-year mark, at a certain point, you just got to go, is this really, should I keep going? You know, did you finance the house? Did you remortgage? Did you refinance the house? Did you give away your firstborn? Like, what was it? What was the journey? Why did it take so long to get up and running?
Well, I had, you know, through all the screenwriting and nothing selling through managers taking my scripts out, I wrote a script about the Donner Party in my mid-20s. I had this like stupid goal that I had to make a feature by 30, you know, like, and,
of course.
And I finally did with the Donner Party. But instead of doing it on my own credit cards, I ended up taking other people's money who then had final cut. So basically, like, even though I put together the cast, we had Gary Oldman at one point wanting to do that movie. We had some really strong interest, but I gave up final cut, and I didn't know how dark a place that would take me to see producers making choices. It's all subjective, but that I did not agree with at all. And then have that movie come out and sell to Showtime. And it was an early streamer on Netflix. So it did get a platform, but I was really disheartened. I said, I'm never going to do that again. Even if a movie takes me 30 years, my next one is going to be 100%. And I fell in love. I found the love of my life with this woman, Dominique. And she's like the kind of person that I would watch a movie with, and we would both get annoyed with the same plot lines and get excited about the same movies. So I thought, hey, like, our taste really lines up. Like, what if we just did a project together, travel the world, go to different islands, so it's not a total loss. Like, the movie's set mostly on this island off the coast of Chile, but we went to Kauai first. We did like a year of scouting, you know, and even if I have to put my own finances and take a loss, we don't have any children at this point. Like, it's going to be a great life experience. And when we did the rough cut, it was just her and I, and we submitted that 7 years ago to Sundance. And like right before they made their announcements, they got like 100 views. And we were like, oh man, like Sundance is really considering our Vimeo link. And then we got a letter from the head at that time saying, hey, like you just missed it. Like, guys, like there's something here. Don't give up on this project. And we were like, okay, cool. Like, I had met Ed Harris the year of Pollock at the Academy Awards, and I knew I could get him that footage. So I said, hey, like, what do you think of Ed Harris? And my wife was like, The Abyss is my favorite movie. Like, let's do it. So we had to configure what we had shot to work Ed in, but we had sent it to Ed and didn't hear anything for like 4 months. And finally I get this little handwritten letter saying, hey, guys, I got your link. I started watching your movie. I'm intrigued, but I can't figure out how the link works. Send it to me again. And we were like, oh my God, we have a chance. And he watched it and he said, hey, like, let's meet for breakfast the next day. And after breakfast, he said, I was meeting you to tell you I'm doing this show, Westworld. So this was the first time he was, and I won't have time to do it, but after meeting with you guys and seeing how you're going to fit my character in, I'm down. You just have to give me a year. So that was a full year of just waiting for him, you know?
Fair enough.
But we were like, we have an icon now. Like, we have Ed. He's really supportive of the vision. He wouldn't have done it if we hadn't shot that stuff, you know? So we knew that we thought we had something special, and Ed did too. So this encouragement kept us going. But when we cut the Ed cut, it fell so into the male energy, which we didn't want. We wanted it to be very balanced. So we had to find an actress to play Dominique's sister. And we actually, she's from Argentina. So we ended up casting Martina Guzman, who's one of the top Argentine actresses. And they have a really similar likeness. But that took a long time because she has a Netflix, she has 2 Netflix shows she does. And she was into it. But again, it was, I think, waiting about a year. So that's another year of waiting, and then a whole editing process. And then it was only during the pandemic when Domi and I finally like said, hey, we agree with this cut. We had been through a lot of editors, and we couldn't get the story to where we both felt it was everything it could be. And during the pandemic, we finally did. We had an editor named Russ who really came in and talked to us quite a bit and worked with us. And we finally got it to where we said, hey, like, we're happy with this. Let's take it to market.
So what are you doing these 7 years to survive, brother? You're living in LA, right? I mean, like, are you doing the page? You're not doing page stuff anymore, obviously.
No, that's just a temporary job. Actually, it's a funny story, man. The guy who I tested, who was the best test screener, like he was like addicted to Ritalin. He would just go and get hundreds of people. And he was my partner on the road, but he was like a total gambling addict. So we would go to Vegas for like long stretches. Adam Sandler loved to test his movies at this place called Sam's Town, which is off the Strip. It's like this, but it has an AMC in it. So he did all his movies there. So I'd be stuck in Vegas with this gambling addict for weeks. And I would go and, play blackjack with him every now and then and lose and just say, hey, I hate this. Like, I don't want to gamble at all. Like, I'm not into it. And he said, well, why don't you try poker, man? Like, you can really beat the game. And I said, really? I don't know much about poker, but it was starting to like blow up at that time. And because we had so much downtime, I started to read books on poker. And within a month or two, I was making double what I was making testing, and I could make my own hours. So
you became a professional gambler?
Yeah, this was like the early 2000s, and the games were just rich. Like, even in Hollywood, I would go up and actors wouldn't even know like anything about poker. And it was just like a free for all during that time. And I would just start going to I don't know if you know the Commerce. It's like the biggest poker room in the world. It's right off the 5, right in here in Commerce. Like, LA was the home of poker even before Vegas. Yeah. So, I mean, I just put all that into the film, really. And I thought, hey, it's easy money.
So okay, I got it. Okay. So let's back up here for a second, because I've heard a lot, man. I've done almost 900 of these at this point in my career here as a podcaster and interviewer. I've had professional gamblers on the show.
Yeah.
Some actors who actually became really good and then got into the World Series of poker.
Of poker, yeah.
Of poker. So I know of the world, but I've never heard of a filmmaker becoming a professional gambler and using that money to survive and to make a movie with.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, I'm not a gambler. That's why I'm so good at poker. Like, the gamblers are why you make money. Like, I'm just sitting there, I'm playing the odds, I'm waiting.
You're a professional poker player, not a professional gambler.
Yeah. All the the regulars would make fun of me because my wife would make me like an organic sandwich, and I would take out my sandwich and listen to calm music. And they would be like, you don't even try to pretend you're a gambler. And I wouldn't. I would just sit there for 7 hours and wait for big hands. And at that time, I don't know if you still could be. I think everybody's gotten quite better at poker, but there are those that just blow off steam and want to gamble. And that's kind of what you're looking for. You go on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. And
that's pretty fascinating. And then you would go up into the hills and stuff like that, the actors' houses and stuff.
Yeah, I would, but those games can be quite dangerous. Like I've had a really famous actor that I used to play with that got robbed at gunpoint at one of those games. Like people find out those games are going on and they can be robbed, and you don't have like the safety of the casino to resolve disputes. Like I actually got into a really, really big fight and got thrown through a window and had to choke out this pretty well-known actor over a poker dispute.
We will discuss who that actor is off air.
No way. Yeah, totally. I'll tell you. He won't like that I say I choked him out because he's kind of a tough guy. But it was either that or just kept pummeled to the.
Well, tell Russell Crowe next time he shouldn't be messing with you. I'm joking. No, that's really fascinating, man. I've just never heard that. I've just never heard the filmmaker doing that. So that's great. And do you still filmmakers out there, I don't recommend this because you have to have a certain makeup. You have to love chess. You have to love game theory. You can't be a gambling addict. You will just lose all your money. You have to, just like anything, put in the work. I read 5 of the top books of the time before I even sat down. Do you still do it?
Yeah, sometimes, but the movies now kicking in, we're hoping that keeps me off the tables.
That's fascinating because I understood that poker is, a game that you can kind of understand, and there is some chance, but if you're looking at how the table is being laid out, you can actually make it a go of it, a profession out of it.
Yeah, and after a while, you develop a database. So you see, you have an edge, even higher than the house edge that Vegas has over the gamblers, like a 10, 15% edge. And the good games, it can go even higher. So it's just like, if you know what you're doing, it's just, there's no losing because you just have to put in volume to cover the losses. But any night, you get aces, you get it all in and you lose. You got to be cool with these people when they do that because that's how you're making money. You can't get frustrated with people for breaking your good hands. That's why you're making money at it.
That's fascinating, dude. So you got it. So I want to talk to you about, as a director, you got Ed Harris on set, who's an absolute legend. There's in the trailer alone of your film, there's some intense scenes with Ed, where he is yelling at you only the way Ed Harris can yell on screen. He's such a great yell. Oh my God.
So great, right? How can you cast him and not get some anger out of him?
Like when he, like that, when I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, it's The Rock. Oh my God, we're back at The Rock. Like, it's just like the yelling. So one, how do you approach directing an icon like that, who's honestly coming down from the Mount Hollywood and doing a little indie film because he kind of, I enjoy it. I think we could do some cool stuff here, but he's doing it out of just truly love. So it's not like he's getting a paycheck out of this, major paycheck.
No,
so how do you approach directing an actor of that caliber?
Well, what I loved about Ed is he directed Pollock and he started it himself. So he's really sympathetic to our journey as independent filmmakers. He volunteers at the Sundance Labs every year. He's really a good soul of support. But as far as having him on set, I was really glad that I was playing a submissive character to him because I could feed into that energy as an actor. There was one really key scene in the office, like very close to where, and I hope Ed won't mind me telling the story because it really helped the scene become better. And I was super nervous and I'm saying action and he's not coming. And I'm like, oh man, this is a big scene. Is he even hearing me? And it's like a minute goes by, 2 minutes go by. I say action again. And then all I hear is, I hear you, motherfucker. And he comes barreling in and does the scene. So the reaction you see is not just acting. It's like he shocked me into the emotion that was needed for that scene. And afterwards he smiled and he said, was that cool? And I was like, yeah, that was awesome, man. I looked at the footage and that was what we had used. And he wasn't afraid to take those kind of chances. And, we were open to them. We had worked on the script a lot at his house, but he knew it needed something that felt stale a bit, and he injected that energy into the scene. And I really thank him for it, because that's what you're saying. That yelling scene, that look on my face is not just acting, you know.
It's Ed doing Ed.
Yeah, and me being like, holy, like I didn't know if like I shouldn't say action. Like I was like, my brain was just doing a million different things, and that was the energy that was needed for that scene. So I thought that was really generous of him. And you know, he's a good guy. Like for him to play this character too, that is a bit controversial in this political time period, you know, what was generous of him, because he's not like that at all in real life. Like he's so supportive and cool.
And you're releasing the film on the tail end of one of the biggest movies of the last,
Yeah.
like the last 10, and he's in it. He's in Top Gun. And he's just so good, man. He's just so good. So good. He just chews up the scenery with his performances. And I mean, he's just a remarkable actor. Is there anything that you took away from him as a creative? From
an acting standpoint, I learned so much, because I acted when I was younger, but I was never big into like driving across town to audition. I just thought it was such a lottery ticket. That I've had friends become successful at it, but they really put in the time, and I much rather write or do projects on my own. But what Ed does that I found really helpful is he actually does the scene before the scene of the movie. So through improv, and he wants to like play that scene out. So he knows how to go into that scene. So when we did the dinner scene, like we said, oh, hey, Dad, how are you? I'm making steak, come in. So we kind of like lead up to that scene. And that was really helpful to make sure when you're in the scene, it's not just figuring it out. Like you've already come to that energy. And I had never seen set,
but on set, you did, oh, really? So you like you yell action, or you like work it before the scene?
No, just in a casual kind of way. So it was like, hey, like what happened 5 minutes before we get into the scene? And we do like a little improvisational exercise. And I find that really helpful, because then when you get to the scene, like the energy is already built to there. You're not just like starting from scratch. Yeah. It doesn't take that much time. And Ed must have developed that technique somewhere. And that's something I'll take with me forever. I thought that was a really good way to go.
I've never heard of that technique. That's a really, really good technique. Thinking about that, because a lot of times you, as a director, action. And you're just we're like
start yelling at each other, like start fighting,
like you've got to rev yourself up to it. So at least if you have some context of what happens before and after the scene, you kind of feel where it is.
You're not like nailed down to like the reality of the script, right? Because you're just improvising the energy of it. You know, you're not even shooting it, so it's like a kind of a free, fun exercise. And that's something that was great. I mean, working with him was just so good, because he's a filmmaker too, so he's constantly seeing it from that side. And I had a great time. On the Donner Party, the actors were more like into the idea of my character, this, that, which is typically how you go. And I came away from that with a much different experience. Like I only want to work with people who really get the overall point of the story, that you can talk with deeply about the themes and ideas, and not just their character, but how it all relates to the greater whole.
That's fantastic. Now, as directors, I ask this question often on the show. You know, as directors, we all have that day that the entire world is coming down crashing around us. It's usually every day, but there's the one day. What was that day for you, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, man. Well, we shot on this island called Robinson Crusoe, which we as filmmakers talked this like guy into giving us or renting us their yacht and getting and told the captain, hey, yeah, we can handle open sea. Like we've never done it before, but I'm sure we'll be fine. And 2 days, I mean, it was like a 4-day journey, and about half an hour in, I wanted to start shooting right away. And our editor's face just like turns completely white. And by the end of by the midpoint, he was coughing up blood, and it was very scary. And I just thought, oh my God, I'm actually like, people are going to die on our movie. Like this is a disaster. And by the time we got to the island, we had already crossed the halfway point, so we couldn't turn back. So as soon as he hits land, he gets to a phone and he calls his girlfriend in Buenos Aires, and he says, I'm so sorry for everything I've done. My life flashed before my eyes. I'm going to be a better man. And the whole energy of us, our crew, our small crew, going through that just made everything a breeze, because people really had like this profound sea journey, you know, that they really thought like maybe they wouldn't come out of it. So that was a very scary day. I mean, if we hadn't crossed the halfway threshold, we might have it turned back, and certainly wouldn't have the movie that we do have.
And I have to ask you, man, because, you know, doing an independent film is tough enough, but you decided to do it in nature.
Yeah.
You decided to go on boats and in islands and and going underwater and surfing and all this kind of stuff. And like,
Yeah.
you don't do, if Jaws taught us anything, is don't shoot on the ocean. I mean, come on. So what was that like on a limited budget?
I mean, it was a struggle, but that's the kind of stuff we love to do in life. I mean, not to that extent. We now know like the boating part is not a fantasy of ours, but we thought if we're going to pay for a film, like let's have these experiences that we'd like to have in real life as a couple together. And then we'll make a film too. So even if the film doesn't have any success, we'll have had these amazing experiences. And I love being outside. I love surfing. My wife is an advanced scuba diver. So all that stuff you see with the seals is all 100% realistic. And
did you get the seals in? Did you fly those in from LA? Are those LA
totally.
Seals?
We had a seal wrangler, you know. We actually had a local guy that was like, yeah, the seals bite people all the time. So that was like the extent of our wrangling. It was like, okay, let's go for it.
This is the insanity of being an artist, and especially the insanity of being a filmmaker, like an independent filmmaker. That there's normal people don't do this.
No,
this is not
we were also able, and filmmakers can maybe other filmmakers can benefit from this. We were able to take from Argentina some of the most talented people of the Argentine industry, and their rates are just not Hollywood rates. So you're getting a guy, and my guy, Lucio, he shot 40, 50 movies that are good movies in Argentina, been to festivals all around the world, but you're getting a much different rate than Hollywood union rates. So we were able to keep the budget low. And I'm sure any country that makes films, probably in India, you can also find talented people. You can look outside the Hollywood channels.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know a lot of filmmakers who've done that, shooting outside, and there's a lot of talented crew around this world. It doesn't always have to be Hollywood. Other than seal wranglers, you need from Hollywood without question. And the financing of the film was all self-financed by you?
Yeah, it was all self. When we got Ed, we had to go SAG. So we actually took on some executive producers, but the same problems started to happen where they wanted to, even though they promised us, hey, we won't have any creative input. It's just the nature of when you take money from someone, you have to invite that. And this project wasn't that. It was a passion project for my wife and I. So it wasn't one that they could kind of massage into being too much of a thriller or this. So we ended up buying them out once we knew like we were going to kind of put out the movie in a way that we weren't getting like a ton of money up front, because that's still what a lot of producers want, even though that's very rare. I learned that from your show. Like Donner Party, I think, was like $250,000 up front, so that at least.
Well, what year was that? Was that?
Exactly. So, but producers still think that's going to happen now. And from your show, I learned like, not only you don't want that, because you want an honest distributor, and you want your ceiling to be much higher than that. And if your movie catches on and you have 80% of it, like you could still stand to do really well. By the way,
out of that $250,000 for Donner Party, how much more did you get after that?
I got nothing.
Exactly. That's the game. That's the game. They're like, we're buying your movie for $250,000. We're not telling you we're buying it, but we're going to still that's all you'll ever see.
Yeah. And I didn't even have a point on it. It was just like a for-hire job, even though I basically did a lot of the producing. And I just totally didn't want to work that way again. It's like part of the beauty of this industry is freedom for me. I love making my own projects, and even if they don't sell or I don't get a chance to make a big studio movie, like it's fun. Like it's exciting and fun to do art and craft and story. And the Hollywood interaction can be very disheartening at times. It's mostly rejection. I try to keep my creative very separate. And over the years, my ratio of like pursuing the industry has gone way down just for mental health, So the more I'm creative, the more I'm doing this. And even if it's just a hobby, which I hope it's not, it's fun, Yeah.
Now, how did you get the distribution?
Well, we had a great lawyer. He's like started out on Monster, and rather than tried to showcase at festivals, he had given me the distributors that were doing very well during the pandemic and giving his clients accurate payouts.
You mean money, actually paying their clients?
Yeah, and not like a little bit of money, like a lot of money. And these are like indie films with one or two known guys. And this was his top one. And he said, "Do you mind if I just share the cut with Brainstorm?" And I said, yeah, sure. Like I'd like to go straight to distribution. I don't want to do this whole journey of trying to get into a great fest and sell it that way. And they liked it. And they said, "Hey, like skip it all. Let's just put it out and see what happens." So we were like, right on, dude. Let's do it. Like, let's put it out. And we just did press, and some people, the first waves were pretty negative, but now we're getting some raves, some people really responding to it. So I think over the years we'll find our audience, and at least if you get some percentage of people loving your film, that can be a lot, especially for an indie.
And where can people see it?
Well, it's on Apple TV now, it's on Prime, and then we'll find a streaming home down the road. I'm interested because of your show also on this ad revenue where
AVOD.
Yeah, AVOD seems to be a way to make some. So I'm sure we'll do that. And then we'll end up, I'm sure, at some point with a streamer and a more long-term kind of deal.
I mean, there's no question that this kind of film will do very well with AVOD because it got Ed in it. Oh, cool. No, and there's no question. You put Ed's face on the thumbnail and people are flying by and they're going to, he's so popular because of Westworld. Yeah. He's just a legend because of who he is. You put his face on there with you two on there in the background, but Ed's front and center.
Sell him, yeah.
And you a thumbnail going by, and I always tell people this: what do you do when you're going on Friday night? You're screaming, you're going through your streamer, whether it's HBO or Amazon or Netflix or Hulu or whatever. What do? You scan, and totally. When do you stop? Either when you find something that's in a niche that you absolutely adore. So if you're a surfer, you're going to watch a surfing documentary or surfing movie. If you're a skateboarder or things like that, those things might attract you. But generally, it's a known face that you're like, okay, I know, because there's so much gluttony of product in the world right now that for me even to try for 5 minutes to try something that I'm not I don't know.
Just switch. I do the same thing.
Exactly. But I got to the point where I don't even try unless it's something I've heard about or I feel about. So that's why Adam Sandler has 3-picture $100 million deals every few years, because Netflix knows that when you're there on a Friday night, and I've done it, man. I love Adam Sandler films. I think they're fun, they're escapist, they're dumb and ridiculous, and they're funny, and they're just what they are. You know, they are what they are. They know what they are, and they try not to be anything else but.
Oh, totally.
And when there's a Kevin James, a David Spade, a Chris Rock, what's his name? The other guy from Bigelow. Those guys, all the Rob Schneider, all the characters that are in the Adam Sandler universe.
Sure.
When you're scanning and you're like, oh, this is a new Adam Sandler movie, I know what I'm going to get because it's safe.
Totally.
You rarely watch it unless you watch something like Hustle, which was the new Adam Sandler movie when it's a drama.
I loved it. Yeah. The basketball, he's a recruiter. Yeah. I love when he does like uncut gems to it. And of course, the one he did with Paul Thomas Anderson, like when he ventures into that, he probably loses some of his core audience, but you can tell like he's really going for it. He's a great actor too.
And he actually could play basketball from what I understand. He's like a real, like he actually can really play basketball.
I heard he has a court at his house, and it's like a little Hollywood game that goes on.
Exactly.
But when I was testing Adam movies, like the audience, when you would come to them with an Adam Sandler movie, their face would just light up with good vibes. So he earns that money because a certain percentage of our entire country and world just love the guy, you know, like he
someone's watching him as much as he might be trashed out there. Like, oh, it's an Adam Sandler. Like, go F yourselves, guys. Someone's watching him.
Yeah. And critical response is so long. I mean, they've missed it on so many great classic movies. The first critical wave is very negative and it takes years. And Adam's going to go down as one of the top guys, like Jerry Lewis, you know, like an icon of comedy, no matter how the reviews were at the time.
And you have to ask, do reviews even matter anymore?
I don't think so.
They don't. They don't have the Roger Ebert or Siskel and Ebert time. Those thumbs could destroy a movie. Or make or break a movie. And then the time of Ain't It Cool News, when that was a real site that did a lot of big stuff. I mean, they destroyed Batman versus Robin. Like they took down an entire studio movie because of what they did. They said about it. But these days, there's too much content moving too fast. Exactly.
You'd love to get the tomato, but great movies don't get the tomato because the tomato is easy. It's almost like Siskel and Ebert, thumbs up, thumb down. You get the red tomato, it's like, okay, it's interesting.
Right. And even then, how many, I mean, it's nice. Look, 100% fresh. We all want 100% fresh in our movies.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it does, does it
I'm not
matter?
following,
Yeah, it doesn't have the sway. I mean, people used to sit there and listen to Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, and whatever they said
exactly.
moved the box office. They were
our
very
friends,
powerful.
right? They felt like friends of you who were talking movies to you. Like that's how I felt growing up. So when they really went and you could see the energy, it was like, I have to see that. So, but yeah, there's no reviewer now. I think that commands that level.
No, there's not even a website that really has that kind of juice other than Rotten Tomatoes, which is just basically a bunch of critics.
Yeah, it's just an aggregate, really.
Yeah, and then the audience, I don't know. Yeah. But anyway.
We had one 5-star that didn't even get to Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm trying to get this 5-star review there, and he reviews for a major newspaper, but for some reason he's not a sanctioned Rotten Tomatoes viewer. But it's a shame because it was like a dude who really fell in love with Get Away If You Can.
That's awesome. These are the frustrations of filmmakers. Like, I got a 5-star review. I can't put it up by a major newspaper. What the hell?
Exactly.
So my friend, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Ask all of my guests. And if you've listened to the show, you know what these are. So you better be prepared.
I do.
What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
I would say fall in love with the process, like don't let the negativity can get in you. And I've seen it happen to so many people, and really not only like spoil your journey in this business, but spoil your life in a way. And if you fall in love with creativity and writing, and you keep that separate from the business, and I'm not saying don't put all the hustle you have into doing it, but really fall in love with that process and don't let anybody take that from you, be it writing, directing, acting. Like, you can do those things on the cheap and have it not be related to your success financially. And I think that that's been a key for me, and something I would recommend to every creative person.
Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Work with good people, man. Even if, man, I know how hard it is, but if you take money, as you know, from taking money from the mob, it's not going to end well. Touche. I know how hard it is, man, because at the time you just want the money to do your project. But if you put those blinders on, you can really screw up your life or be killed, literally.
Yes, sir. As my book has how not to follow your filmmaking dream, as I like to call it.
Yeah, exactly. So if you work with good people, you end up happy, and that's nice.
And 3 of your favorite films of all time.
This one is a tough one, because I was going to tell you should have a podcast just where you ask this question. It could be like 5, bring up all your favorite guests and just talk about this. But because I'm writing like a bigger budget thriller, I've been studying thrillers. So I'm just going to give you the top thrillers of all time. And first is The Sixth Sense, because I don't know if people now realize how big that twist was. That's all anybody in film was talking about, was this twist. To capture an audience's imagination with a twist, like, it's just, I've been studying the script, reading it, seeing how it's been worked in. So I would say that's one. 2001, because I'm writing a sci-fi thriller, and that's got the science, but it's also got the thriller aspect, the man versus technology. And it's just so beautiful. Like, you can learn something new about it each time you watch it. And my all-time favorite thriller is Hitchcock's Rear Window. And I've heard it's just impeccably put together, beautiful cast, everything relates to the story. And because with Get Out If You Can, we're so free and improvisational. I want to do a movie where Hitchcock was the best at shot structure, like every shot told a story and was related to the next shot. And so I've been really studying that film. I just think it's a wonderful movie. My
friend, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your insane journey. Insane journey of making not only this film, but your journey through this business and how you've survived it, because it is it's survival, and you're still at it, man. And I got to give you props for that, because a lot of people would have quit a long time ago and would just become a professional poker player full time.
I'm stubborn.
Exactly. No, you're insane, and that's okay. That's what we are. We are insane creatures that just like, no, I'm going to make my movie. Even if I got to take money from the mob, fine. I'll just do what I got to do. But I appreciate you, my friend. I wish you the best of luck with your film. I hope everyone goes out and sees it, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Alex.